Blood stained the snow in a crimson trail. Bruno, a massive brown bear, dragged his hind leg nearly severed by steel wire, stumbling forward. He wasn't seeking food or shelter, but the impossible, a friend, an elephant named Eleanor. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Whispering Pines Wildlife Preserve. Ranger Michael Evans followed the blood trail with growing concern. 20 years in wildlife management had taught him that injured predators retreat to isolation. Yet this bear was doing the opposite, moving deliberately toward the sanctuary's eastern sector. "He's heading straight for the elephant enclosure," Michael muttered into his radio. "Request backup and Dr. Thompson. We got a severely injured male grizzly, approximately 600 pounds. The bear's enormous paws left uneven prints, 3 normal, 1 barely touching ground. The steel trap had nearly severed his right hind leg, yet something drove him forward with singular purpose." Michael kept his distance, tranquilizer gun ready. What troubled him wasn't just the injury's severity, but the bear's behavior. No wild bear should approach the elephant habitat voluntarily. As the trees thinned, Michael froze. The bear had reached the edge of Eleanor's territory, the sanctuary's eldest elephant, rescued from a circus 15 years ago. Instead of retreating at the massive creature's scent, Bruno collapsed at the meadow's edge, releasing a low, plaintive moan. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't territorial. It sounded like a plea. Michael watched, breath caught in his throat, as Eleanor's massive form emerged from the trees. The bear didn't flee. Instead, he lifted his massive head toward her, eyes reflecting something impossible: recognition. Eleanor approached cautiously, her massive ears spread wide, trunk extended. Any other animal would flee from a predator, even an injured one. But Eleanor moved with purpose, her ancient eyes fixed on Bruno's mangled leg. Michael raised his tranquilizer, finger hovering over the trigger. A 7,000-pound elephant and a wounded predator should be a deadly combination. Yet something in Eleanor's demeanor made him hesitate. "Hold position," he whispered into his radio. "Something's happening." Eleanor stopped 3 feet from the bear, her trunk extended slowly, hovering just above Bruno's wound. The bear didn't growl, didn't swipe. He remained still, eyes locked on the elephant, as if communicating something beyond human comprehension. Then Eleanor did something extraordinary. She emitted a series of low-frequency rumbles, sounds Michael had only heard elephants use with their calves. Somehow, impossibly, the bear seemed to understand, his labored breathing slowing as Eleanor circled him protectively. When Michael's radio crackled with Dr. Thompson's voice announcing their approach, Eleanor's head turned sharply. The elephant positioned herself between the approaching vehicles and the wounded bear. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Rachel Thompson whispered as she arrived, medical kit in hand. Her gold-brown hair was hastily tied back, eyes wide with professional curiosity. That bear should be terrified of her. "I think he sought her out deliberately," Michael replied. "Look at his trail. Straight line from the northern boundary to Eleanor's territory." The medical team worked cautiously, sedating Bruno while Eleanor watched. Throughout the procedure, she never left, her trunk occasionally reaching toward the bear as if checking his condition. When they loaded Bruno onto the transport, Eleanor followed, determined and focused. Back at the medical center, as Dr. Thompson worked to save Bruno's leg, Eleanor positioned herself outside the window. She refused food, water, even the company of her herd. She simply waited, trunk occasionally pressing against the glass. "It's almost like she's standing guard," one of the techs remarked. Michael nodded slowly, or keeping a promise. Something ancient was unfolding before them, something science had yet to fully explain. 3 days passed. Bruno stabilized under Dr. Thompson's care, the steel trap removed, infection battled with powerful antibiotics. But what fascinated the entire staff wasn't just his remarkable recovery. It was Eleanor's vigil. The elephant remained near the medical facility day and night. When Bruno stirred restlessly during painful treatments, Eleanor would emit soft rumbles that somehow calmed him. When he groaned in pain, she'd press her trunk against a window, as if offering comfort through glass and distance. His vitals stabilize when she's present, Dr. Thompson noted, reviewing the monitors. heart rate, blood pressure, even stress hormones. They all improve when he can see her. Michael spent hours observing them, filling his notebook with questions no textbook could answer. Why would a bear seek an elephant? Why would an elephant care? None of it aligned with natural behavior patterns. On the fourth night, Michael stayed late, reviewing the sanctuary's archives. Bruno's tag number had been bothering him, somehow familiar. In the basement archives, he found what he was looking for, footage from 8 years ago. The video showed a tiny bear cub, orphaned after poachers killed his mother. The cub had been housed temporarily in a special enclosure, one that bordered the elephant rehabilitation area, where a younger Eleanor was recovering from circus trauma. The timestamp showed 2:14 a.m. A tiny bear paw reached through the fencing. On the other side, a gentle elephant trunk extended in response. Night after night, the footage showed the same interaction. Elephant and bear cub touching, playing, communicating through barriers. They knew each other, Michael whispered. They were friends. Michael brought the footage to the medical center the next morning. The team gathered around a small screen, watching the improbable friendship unfold in grainy black and white. Bruno was released back into the wild after 6 months, Michael explained. Eleanor stayed at the sanctuary. They haven't seen each other in over 7 years. Dr. Thompson shook her head in wonder, and he remembered her. When he was injured, he didn't go to a cave or water source. He went to find the one creature he associated with safety. Outside, Eleanor drank from a water trough staff had positioned near the window. Her eyes never left Bruno's sleeping form. Elephants never forget, Michael said softly. But apparently neither do bears. That afternoon, they moved Bruno to a ground floor recovery enclosure with a larger window. When Eleanor approached and placed her trunk against the glass, Bruno struggled to his feet despite his injury. He pressed his nose to the window, directly against Eleanor's trunk, separated only by glass. Staff members wiped away tears. Scientists took notes. But Michael simply watched, understanding that he was witnessing something profound, something that challenged everything humans thought they knew about the capacity for connection between different species. This wasn't just animal behavior. This was friendship. A week into Bruno's recovery, the first warning came at dawn. Eleanor, typically calm during morning feedings, suddenly lifted her head, ears spread wide, body frozen and alert. She emitted a powerful warning rumble that sent birds scattering from nearby trees. Inside the recovery room, Bruno rose unsteadily, nostrils flaring, a low growl building in his throat. Michael reached for his radio instantly. Security checked on the northern perimeter. Now, Eleanor's behavior intensified. She circled the recovery building, trunk raised, testing the air. Bruno's agitation grew, his massive body pressing against the reinforced windows despite his injury. The radio crackled. Northern fence shows signs of cutting. Fresh tracks heading inward. At least 3 individuals. Michael's chest tightened. Poachers. Within minutes, the sanctuary's emergency protocol activated. Staff secured vulnerable animals. Rangers armed themselves with tranquilizers, and Dr. Thompson hurried to move Bruno to a more protected inner room. He's too weak to transport, she protested when Michael suggested moving him completely. The stress could kill him. If poachers find him, they will kill him, Michael countered. His pelt and gallbladder would be worth thousands on the black market. Outside, Eleanor had gathered 3 other elephants from her herd. They stood in formation around Bruno's building, a protective wall of gray flesh and ivory that no predator would challenge. Their behavior defied standard protocols, defied explanation. Michael positioned rangers at strategic points, the weight excruciating. Eleanor remained eerily still, only her trunk moving, testing the air like a living sensor. The attack came at noon. 3 men in camouflage emerged from the tree line, rifles slung low. They moved with practiced stealth, following what was clearly Bruno's blood trail from days earlier. They hadn't expected the bear to be alive, merely tracked him hoping to harvest valuable parts. What they hadn't counted on was Eleanor. The moment the first man raised his rifle toward the recovery building, Eleanor charged. Not a blind charge of rage, but a calculated, strategic movement. The ground trembled beneath her massive weight. Behind her, her herd fanned out, blocking escape routes with military precision. The poachers fired once, the bullet grazing Eleanor's thick hide before they turned to flee. One dropped his weapon, another tripped over exposed roots. The third ran straight into the arms of waiting security personnel. Inside the recovery room, Bruno roared, a sound of such primal fury that the windows vibrated. Despite his weakness, he stood tall, facing the direction of the threat, as if ready to defend Eleanor just as she had defended him. When the danger passed, Eleanor returned to her position outside Bruno's window. This time, she bore a small wound where the bullet had grazed her shoulder. Dr. Thompson treated her, while Eleanor stood patiently, her eyes never leaving Bruno's. That evening, the sanctuary director called an emergency meeting. Video of Eleanor's defensive maneuver had already leaked online. Journalists were requesting interviews. Scientists were demanding access. This isn't just unusual behavior, Dr. Thompson said, reviewing the footage. This is unprecedented. An elephant defending a bear from human threat goes against every natural instinct. Michael stepped forward, presenting his discovery about their shared past. It's not random. They have history. What we're seeing isn't just animal behavior. It's memory, emotion, and something that looks remarkably like friendship. The room fell silent as the implications settled. If an elephant could remember a bear cub from years ago, if a bear could seek help from an elephant when injured, what did that say about the depth of animal consciousness they've been overlooking? We need to rethink everything, Michael said quietly. Everything we thought we knew about them, about all of them. 2 weeks after the poacher incident, Bruno's recovery had progressed remarkably. The wound was healing. Infection cleared. Though he would always bear a limp, a permanent reminder of human cruelty and animal compassion. The sanctuary board approved Michael's unprecedented proposal. A special recovery zone would be created where both Eleanor and Bruno could interact safely. A controlled environment that respected both species' needs while allowing their unusual bond to continue. Eleanor's wound had healed quickly, leaving only a small scar. Each morning, she arrived at Bruno's window, waiting patiently as medical staff completed their rounds. Bruno's behavior had evolved too. He'd watch for her, positioning himself near the window when her familiar rumble approached. Dr. Thompson documented everything. Her initial skepticism transformed into scholarly fascination. His recovery speed exceeds all projections, she noted. The only variable is Eleanor's presence. Scientists from major universities requested permission to observe. Conservation organizations highlighted the story as evidence of animal complexity. But Michael remained protective, limiting outside access, preserving the sanctity of what was unfolding. On the day Bruno was deemed strong enough to move to the special recovery zone, Michael watched from the observation platform as the bear took his first steps into the spacious natural enclosure. Trees provided shade, a small pond offered water, and strong but unobtrusive barriers ensured safety. Eleanor waited on the opposite side of the clearing, perfectly still. When the gates opened allowing her access, she moved forward with deliberate gentleness. Trunk extended, ears relaxed. Bruno limped toward her, his massive frame dwarfed by her elephant grandeur. When they met in the center of the clearing, Eleanor's trunk gently touched Bruno's face in a gesture so tender brought tears to the observer's eyes. The bear leaned into her touch, eyes closing briefly. Then, in a display of trust that defied explanation, he laid down beside her enormous feet, exposing his healing wound, his vulnerable underbelly. Eleanor stood guard above him, occasionally touching him with her trunk, as if checking his condition. The scientists furiously recorded data, but Michael simply watched, understanding that science alone couldn't fully capture what he was witnessing. This wasn't just animal behavior. This was wisdom, ancient, profound, and beautifully beyond human understanding. Over the following months, Bruno and Eleanor's story transcended the sanctuary's boundaries. Carefully vetted footage released by the conservation team captured the imagination of millions worldwide. A bear and an elephant, natural strangers, demonstrating a bond that challenged humanity's understanding of animal consciousness. National Geographic featured them in a special on animal cognition. Scientists published papers analyzing their interactions. Children's books appeared featuring cartoon versions of the unlikely friends. But within the sanctuary, Michael focused on something more important, the animals' well-being. Bruno grew stronger daily. His limp remained, but no longer hindered him. He foraged independently, swam in the pond, climbed trees, all normal bear behaviors. Yet he always returned to Eleanor, often sleeping near her, the ultimate predator at peace beside the world's largest land mammal. Eleanor continued leading her herd, fulfilling her matriarchal duties. But each afternoon, she would separate from them, spending hours with Bruno in quiet companionship. Sometimes they walked together along the enclosure perimeter. Other times they simply rested in shared silence. "We've been underestimating them," Michael said during a small press conference. "Not just elephants and bears. All of them. We categorize, separate, assume limitations based on species. But what if those divisions exist primarily in our minds, not theirs?" The question resonated far beyond wildlife conservation circles. If two creatures so different could transcend natural boundaries, what did that reveal about humanity's tendency to judge, separate, discriminate? Dr. Thompson's research expanded to examine cross-species communication. "Eleanor uses specific rumbles only with Bruno," she reported. "And he responds with vocalizations I've never recorded from bears in other contexts. They've developed their own language." 6 months after Bruno's rescue, the sanctuary opened a special observation platform. School children pressed their faces against the glass, watching in wonder as the massive elephant gently played with her bear companion, pushing logs for him to climb, sharing fruit from her feeding station. "Are they really friends?" a small girl asked Michael, her eyes wide with curiosity. Michael knelt beside her. "There's something science doesn't have a perfect word for yet. They're different species who found something valuable in each other, something worth protecting and remembering." The girl nodded solemnly. "Like how people should be." Michael smiled. "Exactly like that. In a world desperate for examples of compassion crossing boundaries, a bear and an elephant have become unlikely teachers, reminding humanity that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from those we've long underestimated. If a bear and elephant can forge friendship across natural differences, shouldn't we question our own prejudices? Have you witnessed unexpected animal connections? Share your stories in the comments to help others recognize the emotional depth of animals we too often misjudge.